4-H camp is a blast.
I think 4-H camp is cool.
The most awesome experience of your life.
4-H camp is awesome and really fun.
While at camp, you'll take an educational journey participating in hands-on tracks like science, engineering, and technology, water safety, outdoor skills, nutrition, and much, much more.
I think it was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in my whole entire life.
4-H camp is life-changing.
So 4-H camp is an amazing, one-of-a-kind experience that you'll definitely want to have.
4-H camp is awesome.
Welcome back. I'm Bob Hines again. We want to cover a little bit about saving seeds. One of the pleasures of vegetable gardening for me is saving some seeds out of my garden of different vegetables. I like being part of the whole process, the saving the seed so for next year, seeing them sprout, things that I've kept from the year before. Several different vegetables are done in different ways. We'll show how you have to save the tomato seed that have to go through its fermentation process. Some of the other seeds you can just, like pepper, you can just scrape out of the pepper and let them dry. Put them in a probably a paper container. Put them in a cool, dry place because heat is the enemy of seeds. Other things like cucumbers, you have to actually rinse off, let them dry, and then store them where you need to. One good thing about seeds is there can be a personal connection. For example, my cucumber seeds that I'm growing for about 10 years were given to me originally by a World War II veteran, and I think of him every year when I plant. And now they're being grown all over the place, locally and other states. In my garden, vegetable garden, I have 7 50-foot rows, and I use the same rows all the time. I don't till. I just keep adding leaves, organic matter to each row, so that they're constantly being built up. And I like to line my rows with wood. This is pine right here. And the reason I like to do that is that it holds moisture underneath for one thing, but it also contains the leaves that I like to put in to overwinter and get ready for next spring. So those are some things I like to do in my rows, because what I'll do in between here is just fill it as full as I can with leaves. Now I'm standing by a hybrid tomato plant. When we think about tomatoes, this is probably one thing that every gardener will have in their garden. Seems like everybody wants to grow tomatoes, and that's a good thing. It's one of our favorites. But there are a couple of kinds of tomato plants. This kind here is called indeterminate because, as you can see, its growing tip will just keep growing up, and as long as it grows up, there will be blooms, and it'll make tomatoes all the way up as long as it keeps climbing up. They do need support. I chose to put cattle panels in my garden rows so that every year I would have something to be able to tie to without having to go out and find something new. This is a hybrid type called Juliet. They are one of the best producing tomatoes that you have. They're a small tomato. They work very well in salads, and as they ripen, they just come on and make lots and lots of tomatoes. The other type of tomato plant is what's called determinate. This type will only grow 3, maybe 4 feet tall. They make all their tomatoes at one time, and then they're done. Another type I have down at the end of the row is called Chapman. It makes a larger tomato that's more suited for slicing. So we can have some for salads, some for slicing, and these seem to keep going very well in the hot weather. Normally, tomatoes, when it gets to be 90 degrees with high humidity, the pollen gets sticky and has trouble being transferred to where it needs to be. So some of the tomatoes will quit blooming and producing when we have these tough conditions, kind of like we are in right now. Some types, like the Juliets, seem to keep on doing, but you can buy heat-tolerant tomatoes that work well in the heat. While we're in the garden here, we have peppers that are good added to salad with the tomatoes that we talked about over here. Some of these, this is a Cubanelle type. Cubanelle peppers grow long and blocky. These are good producers. They're hybrid, staying healthy for now, still producing in the hot weather, and they have blooms still coming up on top, so that's a good thing. We'll look forward to having more peppers. This is our watermelon spot. We're growing some watermelons this year. They're just small, round ones that we hope we will enjoy a little bit later on. They seem to be doing pretty well right now. Have several coming on. Without pollination taking place in the garden, our squash and so many things would not make their final product. They would just rot on the vine. So I have tried to put things in our garden besides vegetables, the flowers, that would attract pollinators. This is morning glories. There are always bees on these. I hope they come over and find the blooms on my plants to help pollinate different things. There is coral honeysuckle up here that attracts hummingbirds. We have some things over here that attract butterflies. Lantana down here that's very attractive to butterflies. So we try to cover all the bases to get pollinators in the garden to help cover all our bases that we need for pollination. We were in the first part of July, and some of the things in the vegetable garden kind of start to get stressed with the heat and humidity. These are cucumbers. You can plant more of these to have some coming along for the fall, but this time of year, even though it's hot and humid, it is time to start thinking about your fall crops. Cabbage, kale, broccoli, and those sorts of things. It's time right now to start those seeds if you want to grow your own seedlings yourself. You can go buy transplants from garden centers, but it is possible to start your own seed, and this is the time of year to do that. One of the places where we have bought seeds before told us to save as many of our own seeds as we can, because as time goes on, there are more and more varieties that are becoming extinct. There is a national organization that concentrates on saving all different kinds of seeds, but it is important for people to save your own seeds as much as you can. I think that every home gardener, when they think about growing their vegetables at home, first thing you think about probably is a tomato plant. Some people like to save your seeds, like I do. You have to be careful when you save your seed and not use a plant that is hybrid, where two plants have come together to produce your plant. You want to use what's called an open pollinated, like the heirloom types, to save the seeds from. That way you know you're getting the same thing you're working with. The first thing you want to do when you save your seed is to be sure that it's ripe from the vine. And to a tomato plant seed is very easy. You just cut the tomato in two, and all you have to do then, where you see all the seeds all in this pulp, just take and squeeze so that everything comes out. Juice, pulp, seeds along with it. And you can just make sure you have all of them. You let these sit, and tomato seeds will go through a fermentation process. I've read that this is necessary so that a covering from the seed will be taken off. Normally that covering would keep the seed from germinating, but when that goes through a fermentation process, that removes the covering and allows the seed to germinate. I'll tip this over. You can see this has been going for 2 or 3 days. As they germinate, they'll get this covering over it, and when it does that, you'll know that your seeds fermentation process is going on. When you're ready, after 3 or 4 days of this stage right here, all you have to do is take water, wash this off, wash the seeds until they're clean, and all the seeds that settle to the bottom are viable. Those would be the ones that you would save for next year. If they float on top of the water, you want to discard those. They wouldn't be viable. So this is a very easy way for you to have more seeds for next year. We've demonstrated how you can save seeds from tomato, where we had to slice it open and squeeze out the parts inside. Some things will grow up and make seeds on the outside of their plant. This is a lettuce plant that we call that bolting, where they grow up and produce their seed pods. These have gotten very dry, which you need to do before you try to collect your seed. These are in tiny little, lettuce seeds are small anyway, so to harvest these I had to just be very careful about taking the small ones and saving these heads, and they actually would just shake off in a bag. Some of these seeds have fallen off and have come up in a voluntary basis in the garden row.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Adam here from the Grant Walker 4-H Educational Center. So one of the things you can do with your sunflowers, if you happen to be growing sunflowers, is to collect the seeds and process them into roasted sunflower seeds, just like you'd buy at a store or at a baseball game or something like that. So the first step in doing this is to dry out the seed heads. As you just saw in the photo collage a moment ago, that's the kind of the just general process to dry out the seed heads. So there's 2 methods. One is you can let the seed head completely die and dry up on the stalk at the end of the season. Once the seeds are all the way dry, you can proceed to this next step we're about to do. The other method up to that point is to, once about 2/3 to 3/4 of the seeds flowers are starting to fall off, and you can revealing the black sunflower kernel right behind the flowers. Once about 2/3 to 3/4 of those are exposed, you can clip the stem and hang it to dry between 2 to 3 weeks until all of the seeds are completely dried. And that's the method that I decided to go with. These seed heads were most graciously provided to us by Louisiana 4-H Central Regional Coordinator, Miss Esther Bowe. So we definitely thank her for helping us out with our virtual gardening track. So I'm going to go ahead and open these up. Again, this is after these seed heads have been hanging, drying for about 2 to 3 weeks. Oh yeah, and as you can see, they're very dry now. So this should be exactly what we're looking for. All right. All right, so yes, you can see that all 3 of our seeds, our seed heads, or flower heads, are all the way dry. So we're definitely ready to go ahead and proceed with our next step. Some of the seed kernels are even falling off on their own already. All right, so now what you'll want to do is just take your dried seed heads, kind of break them apart, peel it apart a little bit, and just rub all of those sunflower seeds into a container. You want to get them all out. You're going to get little bits of the sunflower flower, maybe some of the petals and leaves in there as well, and that's fine for right now. Just try to avoid it as much as you can, but just get as many of the seeds in as you can. So one of the things you'll want to watch out for here when you're doing this process is mold. If you have any kind of mold or anything like that on your flower head, unfortunately you need to discard it. You don't want to take any chances with eating any sunflower seeds that may have had mold on them. But all of ours seem to look okay, and this seems to be all what we have. Now this is a lot of sunflower seeds from just 3 heads. So the next step you'd want to do is try to get as much of those flower petals and leaves and other little pieces that they call chaff out of your seed mix. So there's a few methods to do this. You can even look online for maybe some more innovative methods. But for this, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I pick out all the large pieces. And then what I'll do is get a fan, place about one layer of sunflower seeds on a plate at a time in front of the fan, and the fan will blow away some of that looser chaff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we're going to go ahead and do the next step. All right, now once you've blown away most of your chaff and other plant material out of your seeds, you'll want to cover your seeds to the top with just filtered tap water is fine. You can use distilled or purified water if you'd like. So I've already gone ahead and topped mine off. So just above the line of your sunflower seeds, you want to go ahead and make sure they're covered with water. So you may find different recipes online for roasted sunflower seeds, but I found 2 different ones. One is an overnight method that doesn't require any stovetop cooking or anything like that. That's the one I'll demonstrate today. The other one is a hot method where you'd simmer your sunflower seeds in a saltwater solution for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and use the cold method, which calls for 1/4 cup of salt for every quart of water. And I have about a quart of water here in mine. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I use about a 1/4 cup here. All right. And I'll go ahead and put that in. And just go ahead and kind of mix it up a little bit. You might want to use a spoon or something like that and just go ahead and mix it up. So this is a saltwater bath. So the recipe that I found, this will simply sit overnight while the salt water is able to soak into those dried sunflower seeds. It's very important that the sunflower seeds are dry before you start this process though. So I'm going to go ahead and let this sit overnight, and then we're going to go ahead and continue with the next step. All right, guys, so the next step in processing your sunflower seeds, once they've soaked in that saltwater bath for a day or so, you're going to want to kind of spread them out on a cookie sheet or even just like a table laid out with paper towels or newspaper, preferably somewhere in a sunny location. You may need to cover it with some kind of screening or mesh, ideally to prevent any birds or squirrels from getting at them. But just leave them in the sun for about an hour, 2 hours, just so they dry back out. So at this point, all that salt will have kind of soaked into the seeds and in the seed coat and really given it that nice salted flavor that we look for in roasted sunflower seeds. So ours are about dry now. So at this point, what we're going to want to do is remove the paper towels, get another cookie sheet or baking sheet, and lay a single layer, a thin layer of our sunflower seeds on the cookie sheet. And you'll want to bake that in the oven at about 300 degrees for about 30 or 40 minutes. After about that time, they should get a really nice golden brown color, and you can go ahead and take them out at that time. Now, just like any other recipe that you're trying for the first time, you may need to play around with the temperatures and the times a little bit to really get them how you prefer them, whether it's a little extra crispy or what have you. So now we're going to go ahead and put ours on a new cookie sheet and put it in the oven, and we'll come back and see what it looks like when it's finished. All right, guys, well, we went ahead and baked our sunflower seeds at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for about 40 minutes, and it seems like they're just about done. I tried one, and they're really, really good. These are better than any sunflower seeds you'd buy in a store. So that's pretty much the whole process. Then you have sunflower seeds that are roasted, salted, and ready to eat. So we hope this shows you a little bit more about how to process and harvest seeds from a sunflower to give you a nice, healthy snack. All right, guys, so that concludes our virtual gardening track, part of the Louisiana 4-H Virtual Summer Camp program. So we hope you've learned a great deal about gardening throughout our lesson series this week, and hope this really serves you well in the beginning of your gardening adventure. So have fun with gardening, guys, and we'll see you with our next Louisiana Virtual Summer Camp lesson.